festive fixtures continue to come thick and fast as we return to begin the second half of the EFL Championship season. The 24-25 season continues on Sunday the 29th of December as Matchweek 24 sees every team in action. We as always are going to preview and predict all 12 matches and will encourage you to do the same in the comments. If you beat or match my overall score, you will get a shout out the day after that on Monday when we look ahead to the New Year's Day edition. But for now, before we go and look ahead to weekend's football, let's go and have a look back at Boxing Day because I'm recording this just as the Leeds game has finished. And that has made a bit of a difference to the scores because, unfortunately, my lack of perfect scores has cost me. I pick up 7 this weekend, all for correct outcomes, but just missing out narrowly on a couple of perfect scores. A couple of teams I was a bit ambitious on predicting to score, and a few bonkers scorelines as the Championship always serves up on Boxing Day. Let's go through the rest of those who did beat or match my score though, and there's a fairly big list of you there. Starting with Bandit, who snuck level with me on 7 thanks to that 2-0 win for Leeds at the end. He's level with me and Mello on 7. Then on to 8 we've got Chris, and on 9 rounding up the single figures Leo and this guy. But then into double figures, 4 of you on 10, Brian, Ojo, Sam and Bobby. Bobby cost by going for a Stoke win there. Then on 11 points, in third place is Gordon, and joint first, Peter and Akshay, 12 apiece. And Peter went for 3-0 Swansea against QPR, which was not popular in the comments, but did prove a match-winning performance on the day. So well done to the 2 regulars who finish in joint top spot. For now though, let's go and move on to Sunday's action and a full fixture list, starting with an early kickoff. And that one is Norwich City versus QPR, 2 sides that had very different Boxing Days. Norwich ended a poor run by picking up their first win in 5, that at home to managerless Millwall with a 2-1 win, a game in which they didn't create bundles of chances but did certainly have the best of the game and of course deservedly got their victory by creating the clear-cut chances and dominating the ball. For QPR, it was much the other side of that. They were at Swansea and were abysmal in the first half. 3 down at half-time, fell apart, didn't have a shot on target all game and gave up a few good opportunities as well as over 70% of the ball to Swansea. And just as it looked like QPR were getting back into form this season, a poor display, a very worrying first half there. And I think going into this one as a result, with Norwich winning and restoring some of that brilliant home form, you have to back them. Again, if this had been on the road, you would have maybe tipped Norwich to struggle. But Norwich at home formidable, had that year unbeaten run until recently. Despite a couple of injuries and despite the fact I don't think QPR will throw in 2 awful performances in a row, I do think they will lose this one. So I'm going to go for Norwich City to win narrowly by 2-1, the score I should have gone for them on Boxing Day. Let's move on to the second early game, which is Preston North End versus Sheffield Wednesday. For Preston, it was very much a bit of the old school the last couple of matches. This one, not a thriller, didn't really create that many chances against Hull. A whole side who have been pretty poor on the road. I thought they might be able to open them up a bit more, but in the end it was a grinding out a victory rather than anything spectacular. Didn't dominate the ball, weren't able to be the aggressors in a game, but they managed to nick a 1-0 win, and that is crucial for them at this stage of the season. Just jumps them above a few of those moving into mid-table and widens that gap to Hull, who they beat to 7 points. For Sheffield Wednesday, well, it didn't look like they were staying in the mix after half an hour, did it? 3-0 down against Middlesbrough, really struggling in the first half. Then they mounted the comeback, got back to 3-2. The red card for Borough, of course, didn't help things. And then in the end, Sheffield Wednesday will probably be a little disappointed not to win. But from 3-0 down after half an hour, I'm sure all parties will take a 3-3 draw. I think a very good result for them. Danny Roll, again, showing the tactical nous to turn a game around. And Sheffield Wednesday are right in that mix. They've got probably the hottest managerial property in the Championship. They're absolutely flying and they look so stable compared to previous seasons. You have to say he's doing a wonderful job. And here, while most Preston games aren't thrillers, while Sheffield Wednesday are vulnerable to conceding a goal on the road, I'm going to go for them to get a result in this one. 2 sides with very narrow goal differences, 2 sides in a lot of tight games. I'm going to sit on the fence with the Championship's favourite scoreline and go for 1 goal apiece. Next up is a big game at the top end of the table as Sheffield United host West Bromwich Albion. For Sheffield United, that perfect home record came to an end. 9 wins with 9 clean sheets in succession. Unfortunately thwarted by Burnley, who did a smash and grab job there with a 2-0 win. Restricted them to next to nothing, which will be really frustrating for the home side. and then they came up against players who have individual magic, which you can't afford to give them space. However, the lack of attacking threat will be a frustration for them in that game. Despite it though, they're still in second place. They're joint with Leeds at the top. It's certainly not been a bad first half of the season for Sheffield United. Would obviously still be outright top without that points deduction. On the flip side of that, West Brom's probably the shock of the week, because when we recorded on Monday, the last thing we expected was them to be managerless when it came to the Boxing Day game. It showed against Derby. They were really poor. Derby were able to be aggressive, and we'll get to them later on. But for West Brom, Carlos Corberán going is a huge hammer blow. We got a lot of stick even from West Brom fans pre-season when we put them in our top 6. And we said Carlos Corberán will have them up there. He's done it with worse sides, and he's got teams disciplined. But him going is going to be a huge hammer blow. It's really important they get the next decision right. I'm not sure there's many better about at this level. Can't turn down Valencia. I understand the move, but for West Brom, that's not going to be much of a softener, is it? For this game, I have to assume that they aren't going to have somebody in and managing in the dugout come the next game. It's only 3 days away. It makes it such a bad time as well. And with Sheffield United so strong at home normally, and West Brom not the best in front of goal at the best of times, I'm going to go for Sheffield United to get back to the wins and clean sheets with an ugly 1-0 win at Bramall Lane. Let's get to the 3 p.m. kickoff, shall we? Starting in the northwest with Blackburn Rovers versus Hull City, a big game at both ends of the table. Blackburn involved in actually a really entertaining game against Sunderland. 2 good teams creating lots of chances. In the end, Blackburn scored early and late to get a 2-2 draw. Probably deserved a point out of the game, so good for them to get the late goal. But just a really good game of football, and probably the 2 sides that have surprised a lot this season. Whereas for Hull, after that first win for Ruben Selles, the problems have started mounting again. Pretty toothless at Preston. Yes, they created a couple of half chances, but it wasn't a great game. It wasn't one that made you think, oh, Hull are going to pull away no time at all. And the fact that they were just missing out with Liam Rosenior last year, we know it was a bad decision at the time. Everyone sort of said that. I appreciate the owner wants to chase brilliant football, but I'm not sure, A, that Ruben Selles is the appointment for that. And while he's probably an upgrade in terms of stability from Tim Walter, whether or not he's the answer for what they need, I don't know. It's going to be a tough old festive period for them. Not the easiest games. We know Blackburn are pretty strong at home at the worst of times. They're pretty hard to handle. And even against Sunderland, who are far stronger opposition, they managed to get themselves a result. So for this game, I've got to go for the home team. I actually think, particularly based on Hull's last away performance, it could be a pretty difficult day. I'm going to go for Blackburn to take full advantage and win this one weirdly by 3-0. Let's move to Ashton Gate next for another big game for the visitors at the bottom. It is Bristol City versus Portsmouth. Bristol City with a 1-0 win against Luton in what was a pretty turgid game, let's be brutally honest. Luton set up to be a bit more cautious defensively, and Bristol City struggled to break it down. It was going to take a stunning goal, and Scott Twine produced it. Fair play to him, great strike, deserved to win the game. They did give up a couple of good chances, Bristol City, despite the fact that Luton didn't get in many times. They'll still be concerned that they're giving up good opportunities to the opposition. But a big win for them moves them back up into that top half. Whereas for Portsmouth, another late goal conceded. We mentioned throwing away the lead against Swansea. And again, away at Watford, it looked like being a perfect little smash and grab point. But while the home form is starting to improve for them, away from home, there are still a few concerns. So I'm not sure this one's going to be easy for them. Conceding a late goal again, they didn't really create much in the game at all. So it is going to be tough. I think at home, this would have been a very different fixture. But at Ashton Gate, I've probably got to go for Bristol City. I will back them to concede a goal because 2 clean sheets in a row, very rare for those who have followed this over the long term. I'm going to go for Bristol City to beat Portsmouth at home, but by 2-1. And they're inconsistent, so who knows at this point. Next, we move on to Frank Lampard's Coventry City, possibly against Alex Neil's Millwall. Could be 2 of the newest managers in the Championship going head-to-head. We'll wait and see if that works out or not. For Coventry, pretty much the dream fixture to have, isn't it? After that really tough away day, a 4-0 win at home to Plymouth, who are just abysmal on the road. We'll get to them a bit more later, but Coventry took full advantage. They dominated the game. They opened them up. Was always going to be a style that was going to be hard for the visitors to handle, but Coventry really made amends. A big victory for them. Again, just pulls them away from that bottom area of the table and makes it a 9-point gap to the side they beat at the bottom. Whereas on the flip side of that, Millwall, we expected them to have a manager in place and maybe be able to put up more of a fight. But to be honest, against Norwich, they were second best for the most part. it did look briefly like they were going to have a go in the game, but a 2-1 defeat was completely fair in my opinion. And it's going to be a very important game for them here because we've seen Coventry can produce goals at home. They've always had a good home record in the Championship since they've been back. And for Millwall, it's going to be again a guess of whether the new manager's in place, whether or not they're able to be a bit more aggressive, get that bounce, or will they sit up and try and be defensively cautious against Coventry? Because they have done that well at times this season. They've only conceded 20 goals in 22 fixtures. For this one, I'm going to go for it to be a much tighter game, but Millwall do struggle for goals. So I'm going to go for Coventry City to nick a win, a very different style to the Plymouth one. Just 1-0. We're talking of huge games at the bottom. This one certainly fills the criteria. It's the side Coventry beat that we just mentioned as Plymouth Argyle travel to Oxford United. Oxford got just about the perfect start under Gary Rowett, made it a little nervy late on, but a 3-2 victory at home to Cardiff. Bit of a weird game really. There weren't many great chances in it, but there happened to be 5 goals. But Oxford United got that home win we thought they might, and that just pulls them away from that bottom 3 very slightly. But this is a huge spell for them. They're basically at home to the 2 worst teams in the division, looking at the table. They've got to get 6 points out of it. We talked about it. They did the first part of the job, albeit they were a little bit sticky defensively still. But going forward, they had a goal threat. They were a lot more aggressive, and that buzz was back, which looks like being a good sign for Oxford because they're going to need home results. For Plymouth, we mentioned they were awful. It was over at half-time against Coventry City. Yes, they shored things up a little in a second, but it was too little too late. The Mike Phelan bounce has certainly not helped the away form, albeit at home the last performance was a little better. I think this is going to be another difficult day for Plymouth. I think Oxford United have to win. And you know what? I'm going to go for them to score big again. I'm going to go for 3-1 to Oxford against Plymouth. And I actually think under Gary Rowett, they've got half a chance now. Next, we move to another manager at the bottom under pressure as Stoke City host 4th place Sunderland. Stoke under Narcy Palak, we've mentioned it, they're struggling. They're in a worse position than they were under Stephen Schumacher. And against Leeds United, we've seen Leeds have a training session at home against a lot of teams. They had one on the road this evening as I'm recording this. It was a pretty tepid home display. If we're being honest, Leeds probably should have had 4 or 5. Yes, Stoke had 1 or 2 chances themselves, but it didn't create a lot in the game. They relied on Leeds' mistakes, and to be honest, they never looked like getting anything out of it. It's been a really poor spell for them, and I wonder if the new man's under pressure already. Certainly not been the dream start he would have been hoping for to his managerial career. On the flip side of that, Sunderland involved in that really good game against Blackburn. The start of the day, if you'd have said a 2-2 draw away there, probably would have taken it. The manner of it, conceding in the 90th minute, will be frustrating, but there was nothing to suggest that both of those sides won't be in a playoff push given the quality of the game. And again, Sunderland bring that unbeaten run to 5. They're finding a way to not lose many games this season. It's a very good trait to have, only 3 defeats in 23. It is a bit of a banana skin on paper this, but Sunderland are becoming fairly consistent and fairly reliable. Stoke City also, but maybe in not such a good way. So I'm going to go for Sunderland to win on the road here, increase the pressure on Narcy Palak with a 2-1 victory away at Stoke City. Next we head to South Wales, and I thank the EFL for putting this game at one of the couple of grounds I haven't done in the Championship on a Sunday after Christmas. It is Swansea City versus Luton Town. Not that you want to go and see Luton away from home at the moment, the way they're playing. That makes it 8 defeats in succession on the road, a 1-0 defeat at Bristol City. Again, it's the same old story. Look, it's not a good performance. Luton are going for a spell. It's a tough season. Didn't have a full complement in defence again. However, they created a couple of great chances despite not having a good game or producing a lot overall, and didn't take them. And it's been the story of the season. Luton are underperforming their expected goals and their clear-cut chances more than any other team in the Championship. And that is part of the reason they're in 18th place now, rather than perhaps on the floating edge of the playoffs. Away from home, that is really costly, particularly when you give away a stunning goal like that. Not a huge amount I can do about it. Not too many big defensive mistakes. A bit more of a solid performance, however, it's not going to get you anywhere fast, is it? For Swansea, much the opposite. A brilliant first half against QPR. Game over virtually at half-time. Really dominated the game. Didn't give up a shot on target. And you know what? While they didn't create 20, 30 shots, they were ruthless. They created good opportunities and took them. The thing that Luton haven't been doing all season. If this had been at Kenilworth Road, I of course would have backed Luton to get something from the game. But away from home, they're just not picking up points at the moment. So I have to go for Swansea to win. They found their clean sheet form again in time too. So I'm going to go for a comfortable home win by 2-0 for Swansea. Well, the final 3 p.m. kickoff is probably the closest we're getting this game week on paper to a home banker. I don't want to use that word because they left it late last time, but it is Watford versus Cardiff City. One of the best home forms in the Championship against the side in 23rd who just can't win a game at the moment. Cardiff lost 3-2 away at Oxford, a crucial defeat for them, especially when you consider what the next fixture was. And although it was 3-2 with those 2 late goals, it flattered them. They created next to nothing most of the game. Let's be honest, they were awful for 80 minutes. And Cardiff have been very poor for some time now, pretty much since they gave the interim the job to the end of the season. I've got a feeling they're going to have to pull out the stops and try and get someone in, because otherwise I can only see it ending one way for them. It's sort of what most people predicted with them last season, and it looks like it's coming a year later. A real shame for Cardiff at the minute, but you can't see them winning a game. For Watford, they left it late against Pompey, but they dominated the match. They deserve to win. They are playing well at home, and they've got a team spirit and a character to score those late goals, to force a late change of results, something they didn't have for a couple of years. So Tom Cleverley gets massive credit. Watford are doing really well, and Cardiff look completely helpless away from home at the minute. So I have to go for a home win. I think this one will be more comfortable, and if Watford can score in the first half, I think it will open up, and I think they win comfortably. If Oxford can score 3 at home against them, I think so can Watford. I'm going to go 3-0 to the home side against Cardiff. At 5:45 on Sunday, it's a bit of deja vu because the early evening kickoff is the same side at home. It's Derby County, this time against Leeds United. Derby, of course, were boosted hugely by Carlos Corberán leaving West Brom a couple of days before their fixture, and it definitely showed in the performance. Derby played really well. They were able to be a bit more aggressive. West Brom just weren't quite as well set up and disciplined as usual, which you have to expect. It's been a tough week for them, but Derby took full advantage. And I mentioned last week, they would have been so devastated to have lost that game at Luton. They were minutes from winning it, to then come away with nothing, somehow via 2 deflections. They'd have been absolutely mortified, but fair play to them. They bounced back. They've been solid at home all season. They've had a couple of tough results there, but generally speaking, they've been competitive in all the games. And to beat West Brom is no mean feat at any stage. Against Leeds United, though, it might be a little bit tougher. They blitzed a very poor Stoke side. Again, the only criticism of Leeds away from home is they should be scoring more. They're creating almost as many chances as they are at home. They're just not taking them. And on odd occasions, they give up a silly goal. But against Stoke, I mean, they didn't look like creating much at all. So this game's going to be a harder one to call because Derby are solid at home. Leeds United might not take their chances. Joel Piroe seems to be hitting form at the right time. No, a couple of the wide players look great. Are they playing for January moves? You don't know. I'm so stuck here because I often go for Leeds 1-0 on the road. I could easily see it being 1-1 as well. The Championship's favourite scoreline is a popular one for Derby at home against the top sides. I'm going to go for 1-0 to Leeds United purely because I want to save the other result for a moment. So I'm going Leeds by 1-0. And there's your first little spoiler of the festive period as we move on to the final game of the day. It is Middlesbrough versus Burnley, the 8 p.m. kickoff. Very contrasting days for the two of these. For Burnley, it was a fairly quiet start away at Sheffield United, followed by 2 good goals, 2 moments of inspiration. Brownhill and Fleming, probably 2 of the best players who can come up with a moment in the Championship. And he did that to get an excellent win at Sheffield United, restricted them to very little. And you've got to say, when you're conceding less than a goal every 2 games, you're always going to be in with a shout. It's almost a bit scary for the rest of the league to think that Burnley haven't fully clicked yet going forward. They are having a lot of frustration, but maybe that's just what they are this season. We're kind of expecting this attacking iteration to come like we saw under Vincent Kompany towards the end, but maybe they are just going to be the impossible team to beat. 2 defeats all season, 9 goals conceded, and they're scoring enough goals. So as long as they keep doing that and popping up with a moment or 2, they're always going to win games, aren't they? For Middlesbrough, a little bit different. Goals galore at both ends at the moment. A 3-3 draw against Sheffield Wednesday. They were 3 up in half an hour. They were dominant. They were comfortable. What happened? Because in the end, they're very happy to get a point after going down to 10 men and giving up and relinquishing their 3-goal lead. Sheffield Wednesday dominated the second half. It was a clinging on job, but the one credit you do have to give is that they regrouped and got a point. But Middlesbrough have thrown away leads at times this season. We talked about the one at Norwich a few weeks back. Had another one here as well where they were so comfortable at home. it's definitely going to be a concern for Michael Carrick because they're not always consistent in front of goal. And when you're scoring 3 at home, you really expect to be winning against sides below you. That would have kept them in the playoffs going into these fixtures. As it is, they're going to a tough one now, and I'm not sure they're going to get the victory. For Burnley, I can see this being the sort of game where they'd be happy to set up and try and hit on the break. I think they might get one, but Borough have got great players in there as well. So I will finish with my second and final Championship's favourite scoreline at 1 apiece between Middlesbrough and Burnley to finish. Let's have a quick recap then of what I've gone for in match week 24. We have gone for 2-1 draws between Preston, Sheffield Wednesday and Middlesbrough and Burnley. I've gone for Leeds to nick it at Derby to stay top and Sheffield United to keep the pace with their own 1-0 win. And then the big wins of the match week for me are Oxford 3-1 at home to Plymouth Argyle, Watford 3-0 at home to Cardiff and Blackburn at 3-0 at home to Hull. Those are just my predictions for match week 24 though. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below and give me your predictions for this match week. If you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out in the next episode, which will come to you on Monday, looking ahead to the New Year's Day fixture list. Loads to come in the Championship, so make sure you stick with us. Thank you so much for being here as always. I hope you had a great festive break. We will be back in the usual spot when it comes to the next episode. But thank you very much for putting up with the echo and the blank background. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, chuck a thumbs up, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, all that usual stuff. And I'll see you back here on Monday with the Luton Town background again as we look ahead to match week 25.